learn as much as possible and surround yourself with the best. And that's how you wanted to learn the fastest, right? And if the answer to those two focuses is abroad, then work abroad, and that's fine. You explore what you like, you learn from the best. It depends on what industry you're at or what you wanted to explore, right? Go for it, because probably there are some industries that is best learned back home. There are some industries that's best learned outside of your home country, and that's totally fine. But I wouldn't stop there.
Hi, this is the Understanding Asia podcast. My name is Jarditya Tantra, but most people call me Rad. I'm originally from Bali in Indonesia, and I'm a consultant currently pursuing my MBA in the United States. I started the Understanding Asia podcast to explore stories from leaders across Asia who I want to learn from. Through these conversations, I aim to share the hard-earned lessons they've gained throughout their careers and build a community centered on professional growth in Asia, no matter where in the world you're listening from. On today's episode, we have the privilege of speaking with Satria Situmorang. Satria is the CEO of Satu Dental, Indonesia's fastest-growing dental network, focused on making high-quality dental care more affordable and accessible to all Indonesians. Prior to becoming CEO, he was a director at Alpha JWC, Indonesia's leading venture capital firm, and previously led food delivery and ad strategy at Gojek, Indonesia's largest ride-hailing and food delivery platform. In our conversation, he discusses the motivations behind his career transitions, why he's optimistic about Indonesia's future, and how he thinks the younger generation should approach creating value, especially in Asia's emerging markets. It was a really interesting discussion, so be sure to stick around for the entire episode. If you enjoyed today's episode, please rate and review the Understanding Asia podcast wherever you listen, and follow us on social media at Understand Asia Podcasts. That's at Understand Asia Podcasts. Our DMs are always open for feedback and new guest suggestions, so please feel free to reach out. Without further ado, let's jump right into our conversation with Satria Situmorang. Okay, thank you for joining.
Thank you. Thank you for having me today.
Yeah, of course. Really excited to get the opportunity to speak to you and sort of get to know your career, background, your life story, what sort of lies ahead. So yeah, I think it'll be a really interesting conversation. So maybe I could start with your background and early journey. Can you walk us through basically your life story? Where did you grow up? How did you get to where you are currently as a CEO of Satu Dental?
Okay, thank you. First of all, thanks again for having me in your podcast, Dit. So, a little bit about my background. I grew up in Balikpapan, which is a small city in east of Kalimantan. My mom was actually a dentist. She has her own practice in Balikpapan, and I grew up watching her practice. Right, I learned how to read in her clinic. I learn. I do my homework there as well, and I did not know back then that I would end up going into the dental industry, but that's for later. I can explain. After that, I went to Jakarta for middle school and high school. Then I went to ITB, Institut Teknologi Bandung, as an engineer. Right, graduated in 2011. Like all engineers back then, the sexiest industry was oil and gas. So I followed the crowd. I enjoyed working in oil and gas. I became an engineer, a field engineer actually at a company called Schlumberger, a service oil and gas service company. And then I became a site manager at Chevron. I spent around 5 years in total in the oil and gas industry. Then I went to the business side of things. I applied for LPDP, the scholarship from the government of Indonesia, and I went for my MBA at Kellogg School of Management in the US. Did that for 2 years. Came back to Indonesia, worked in management consulting, Boston Consulting Group. Then I moved into Gojek right during COVID. I did not know whether that's very brave decision or a stupid decision back then. Then at Gojek, I got the chance to lead the online food delivery business for multiple countries. So I did that in Gojek for almost 5 years. Then I went into venture capital. I spent my time working with founders who are running startups, learning how they make decisions, how they grow their business. And then they actually inspired me, right? Sitting across these founders who pushed through all the hard days, rebuilt when things got broke, and seeing them keep going, it it does something to you. It inspires you also, and it triggers this interest in me to also build something of my own. So when the opportunity to help and lead Satu Dental came up, um, it just clicked. And it doesn't hurt that I had some familiarity with the dental industry as well. So then I moved to Satu Dental as the CEO.
Awesome. Yeah, there's a lot to unpack there. I think something I'm particularly interested about is it seems like you've had a lot of sort of lives in your career. You've put on the consultant hat. You started your career as within the engineering sort of technical side rather than the business, and you've moved across industries quite a lot, right? Maybe I'll ask how intentional was that? Like, how do you typically decide what's your next role? Because I think that's something that a lot of people, whether it's like early in their career wanting to change jobs or like midway throughout their career, considering a career change, whether it's like to a different company or a different industry altogether. So how do you typically decide what your next role will be, given how much
Yeah.
experience you've had?
Yeah. I mean, I wish I can say that, oh, there is a grand design. I thought about
Mm-hmm.
this and I'm playing a 5-dimensional chess to figure out what I want to do in the next 10 years. To be honest, there's no grand design. So I just have some principles, right? The first principle is that I will do my best in whatever job and responsibility I have today. Um, that is the first principle. But secondly, whenever I am assessing a new opportunity, I have 4 questions that I always ask myself. Question number one, which is very important to me, is when I take this new job, can I contribute to the business and make an impact? When I say making an impact, it's making an impact both to the company, but also making an impact to the society through this job, right? So
Mm-hmm.
that's the first question that I ask myself. Second question that I ask myself is, does the business really do something meaningful that I can be proud of one day? You can always earn some money anywhere, but it's much better if you can achieve at least both. You get some earnings, but also you can have some legacy and do something that you can be proud of
Mm-hmm.
someday, right? Third question that I ask myself is pretty simple, and I don't want to be naive, but will I enjoy my job if I do it? Last question I ask myself is, can I learn something meaningful that can be useful in the future? So very simple questions, Raditya. But these simple questions help me guide my career journey, and there's a lot of luck as well. I don't want to disregard that. There's a lot of luck that that plays a role in your career journey as well.
Yeah, I think that something that really comes across from you, like when I speak with you, is that oh, like you've obviously had a lot of success in your career and are in sort of positions where you can generate a lot of influence, but at the same time, you haven't lost sight of the sort of people that got you to this point and sort of staying humble as a result. So that's something I respect a lot. I think one aspect that I'd personally be interested about is learning more about your sort of early technical career as a drill engineer, since this is a world that I'm not particularly familiar with, and through like my casework at my consulting firm, never had the chance to go into or dive into anything related to sort of energy or like natural resources. So what was that experience like, sort of starting your career as a drill engineer and like a site manager at Chevron? Do you think it taught you anything early on that you could like carry forward in the more business side of things?
Yeah. So um, back in 2010s, right? I graduated from ITB, and oil and gas was the most attractive industry for engineers. It's where all the young graduates wanted to go into. So getting a job in oil and gas really gave me some level of confidence. Maybe to share a little bit about what the job looks like. It's really like, as a drilling engineer, you go into the field. And when I say the field, it's like in the middle of the forest or sometimes offshore, right? In the middle of the sea. It's a very high pressure environment because you're dealing with um, very expensive equipment, and any decisions that can delay operations can cost the company hundreds of thousands of dollars, or worse, it can expose people to being unsafe, and people die in the oil field every week. So that's
Wow.
how high pressure the environment is. Um, I started as a field engineer, then I became a site manager at the age of like 22 or 23, very young.
Wow.
Um, so I was responsible of leading like 30, 40 people in the field making operational decisions, right? Um, it was very transformative for me. It taught me very good leadership lessons that I continue to remember until today. There are two key lessons, I guess, Raditya. Number one is organizational empathy, I call it. So before you can become a site manager, before you are in charge, um, you need to go through a certain curriculum. You need to try and do the job of an operator or a technician. You do that for months. And you start, I mean, most people have never done this job before. So you start like at the really bottom of the pyramid and you do the job. And only then you truly understand what it's like to do the job and being the people that you wanted to lead, right? Um, you then have empathy on how frustrating it is when the tool doesn't always work. You have empathy about how important it is to have safety because you go climb up the ladder up 40 meters and you understand how risky it is if all the safety equipment are not working properly.
Mm-hmm.
And you have empathy around exhaustion when you work 12 hours, very intense shifts. And
Mm-hmm.
that, once you go through it for months, you go around multiple jobs. And when you became the leader and the site manager in that site, you think differently when you make decisions. You stop taking shortcuts, and you become wiser and in leading the operations. At the same time, you gain respect as well. I carry this lesson with me, right? For example, when I started the job at Satu Dental, I became the receptionist in the clinic and see how tough it is to become a receptionist. Don't ask me how
Mm-hmm.
many complaints I got because I was a very bad receptionist, right? But that level of empathy really differentiates between leaders who just tell people what to do and really understand how things could break um, when you say something. So that's a very good lesson, I believe.
Mm-hmm.
Number two is staying cool under pressure. That's the second lesson in leadership. I explained earlier about how intense their environment is. There is a mantra that I used to have. Um, when there's issues in the field, I always say, do not panic, never panic. If nobody dies, it can be fixed. And I bring that mantra as well when I lead businesses now. Hey, I know sometimes we make wrong decisions, sometimes things break, but nobody dies. Nobody dies, so it can be fixed. Let's think clearly and fix things. It really helps because as a leader, you always wanted to lower down the tension. You always wanted to think clearly, and the way you think, if you panic, the organization also panics. So it really helps. These are two lessons I continue to bring in any role I have today.
I see. That's awesome. I think on your first lesson there on empathetic leadership, so sort of putting yourself in the shoes of the people you're working with, whether they're on the same level as you or maybe below, like maybe a more junior person. I think that's really sort of inspiring. Like being able to do the role, like even as a CEO, do the role as a receptionist, and being able to empathize in that light, I think is that's a great lesson for folks to sort of take away. And then the second bit also really is a good transition to what I want to talk about next, which is the sort of motivation to go into the business side of things, right? At what point did you realize you wanted to pivot or make that pivot from the more technical side of things and transition to the more business side? What drove that decision, especially choosing to get your MBA at Northwestern Kellogg in the US?
Yeah, honestly, I always wanted to study management since I was young, Raditya. Since like middle school or high school, I was always interested in thinking about, strategy, organizing things, moving people together toward a common goal. I like that. I was always interested to do those kind of things. When I was in high school, I wanted to study management or business, but my dad said no. He said like, "Hey, you gotta be you gotta become an engineer." So
that's a common theme I'm seeing with the different guests I have. So their parents will dictate at least what their early career looks like. But yes, go on.
Exactly, like any typical Asian parent, right? So of course I went into ITB, and I didn't regret it. Being an engineer, it taught me how to do analysis more rigorously, problem solving in a more structured way, and I didn't regret any of it. But I wanted to move to the business side because I know that a lot of decisions, and if I want to make impact, and I'm attracted to making impact since I was young. If you want to make impact, you need to understand how the business works because because discussions around capital allocation, discussions around strategic partnership, discussions around opening up or closing down a business, those are made by people who understand the business. So I decided after I did enjoy my job as an engineer, but I moved to the business side knowing that I want to make bigger impact. And I got lucky and I was very fortunate to get an MBA in the US um, after maybe 10 years delay, but but um, but yeah, it was always in my interest to study business and move to the business side of things.
I got you. Would you say that one side, i.e., technical versus business side, is more important than the other in terms of wanting to make an impact? So for example, as CEO of Satu Dental, I assume there's some kind of technical side involved with actually understanding, um, like dentistry,
Of course.
and like versus understanding how a clinic runs and how to grow a network of clinics and understanding the value chain behind that, um, to like increase revenue and lower costs. So, do you think one side is more maybe important than the other for anyone who's considering creating impact in their careers, no matter what industry?
Yeah. Um, I think both are equally important, Raditya, because you cannot make good decisions without understanding the finance side of things or the strategy side of things. But you also cannot innovate and try new things without understanding the fundamental of the business, right? Um, what I also want to say is that you don't have to know everything in depth. A certain level of depth is required, but you can always surround yourself with great people that can help you make good decisions as well, right? But as a CEO, you need to have a certain level of understanding. Otherwise, you cannot really rely on all the other people to help you make decisions, because otherwise you wouldn't be able to innovate and push things. You need to have a certain level of technical understanding. Otherwise, you wouldn't be able to push and innovate and disrupt an industry, for example, right?
Yep,
Yeah.
I got you. That makes a lot of sense. Sort of going back to the business side of things and the MBA. Post MBA, you went to Gojek, and for those who don't know, that's basically Indonesia's sort of homegrown premier ride-hailing and food delivery sort of super app. So you spent several years at Gojek, specifically GoFood strategy in Indonesia and other countries in Southeast Asia. Um, so when you're making the decision post MBA to go into a certain career path, what drew you to this company originally, and especially when you joined like at the start of the pandemic?
Yeah. Gojek has always been a very interesting company, right? They started in
Mm-hmm.
2015. They appear in news or on the road every day. We
Mm-hmm.
watch it.
Yep.
I was attracted to the company for a few things. I think number one is seeing how a company can make so much impact in the lives of Indonesians is so inspiring to me. Um, and that reason alone is 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 big enough actually to attract so many people, right? I want to join that ship who creates impact to Indonesia at that scale. And for illustration, sorry, for your reference, Gojek has 2 million drivers active and at least 200,000 merchants active in them. Almost no other company in Indonesia has that reach of an impact, and it's so um, attractive and inspiring to be able to join and contribute at that scale. So that's number one. Um, Number two, I think it's just that I know a lot of great talent working at Gojek, be
Mm-hmm.
it be it Indonesians or foreigners. They were able to attract very smart and talented people, and I wanted to join because I want to learn from them. I was always attracted to learning, and I truly believe that if you surround yourself with the best people, you'll be able to learn a lot. And that was so true during my experience. A lot
Mm-hmm.
of people actually, Radit, um, a lot of Indonesians who have worked 10 years or 15 years abroad in Europe or in the US,
Mm-hmm.
they only came back to Indonesia because of Gojek, and I actually want to learn from those kind of people and get some inspiration from them.
Yeah. Um, Growing up in Indonesia as well, especially during the rise of Gojek when I was in middle school, high school, um, it's definitely a very pervasive, or the impact is very much felt across all places that Gojek operated in Indonesia, and seeing that rise was specifically inspiring, and is an element of me being really optimistic about Indonesia's future currently and at that time as well. So you had the sort of privilege to be in a very impactful position at Gojek, where you basically managed GoFood's strategy. Uh, I assume with that comes a lot of big decisions and some challenges along the way, operationally. So, what were some of those big challenges that you faced while you were managing GoFood, especially at that scale, nationally and like across the region in Southeast Asia?
Yeah. When you lead a business as large as GoFood, you realize and respect that you actually have so much power and influence that can impact millions of lives, right? And the biggest challenge is to balance between the short term pressure to grow the business and increase profits versus doing what's good for the world, to be honest.
Mm-hmm.
Um, because you can move and make decisions to 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 any spectrum of that uh, balance, right? And let me give you an example that kind of like shapes how I think as well, right? So um, in GoFood, there is what we call a parking fee. Parking fee is basically happens because a lot of restaurants where the drivers need to pick up the food charges parking fee. The parking fee can be formal, meaning there is a formal way where they charge it, or informal, which happens in many emerging countries like Indonesia, right? Historically, um, the customers did not pay for the parking fee because there's no formal way to do it. And what happens is that unfortunately the drivers have to pay out of pocket.
Mm-hmm.
And this is actually a big amount. This can be 20 to 30% of the income per order by the driver. So this is a lot for the
Mm-hmm.
drivers. But what happens typically is the drivers ask to the customers to pay for the parking fee in the form of a tip, like tipping. But uh, most of the time, they are reluctant to ask for it because sometimes the customers did not trust that there was really a parking fee,
Mm-hmm.
and they got bad ratings. Sometimes they get bad ratings if they ask.
Mm-hmm.
So often they stop asking, and this hurts the drivers a lot. Now, I knew this is a genuine problem, and this is a very big problem for the drivers, right? Um, and I was thinking whether we should formally charge the parking fee, but it will hurt the volume of orders because I will charge more to the customers.
Mm-hmm.
And if the competition did not follow, my market share will go down.
Mm-hmm.
On the other side, I keep asking myself, hey, Satria, what are you here for? Are you here just to optimize profits for the company, or you want to really do good for the country or for the world? Long story short, Raditya, we decided to implement a parking fee because I know, or we know together, that it was the right thing to do. Um, we were blessed. I was blessed that GoFood was the biggest player with the largest market share when I was leading it. So I was thinking to myself, hey, the only company or the only team that can shape the industry this way is the leader of the industry. And we have the responsibility to shape the industry to do good. And and if GoFood was not the one doing it, no other player would do it because we're the
Mm-hmm.
number one player, right? We have that influence and power. Nobody else would do it. So we decided to do it, and we included the parking fee as a structured fee in the ecosystem, and we're glad that the drivers now get paid fairly. So
Yeah.
it was very meaningful. It's not easy, to be honest, but it really shapes how I think about running businesses.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, that's awesome, and that's the uh, sort of vibe or the culture that I've heard about Gojek, where it's very much for Indonesia, and there's an element of national pride involved in working at such a homegrown company. So I think this story really illustrates that. You're sort of using that, like, who are you actually here for and operating for, and using that as a sort of criteria for decision making. I think that's really insightful and impressive. Maybe for my own understanding, how do these decisions actually get made at a big Indonesian company like Gojek? For example, if we take the example of the parking fee, how long do such decisions take, and what does the sort of process look like for getting approval for a certain decision to go through, assuming that you have the final sort of say in, for example,
Yeah.
charging a parking fee or not?
Yeah. These decisions take a few months to make, not only from developing and deciding the structure of the solution, but also it requires product development as well, right? You can imagine now we wanted to start charging the parking fee automatically, but before being able to do it, you need to do tens of thousands of surveys in all of the merchants, because you need to know exactly which restaurants um, really charge parking fee and how much. And we need to have a system to continuously update it, because the parking fee can change time to time, right? Uh, I need to align with our CFO, with our CEO, with our driver team. So it's quite a big stakeholder alignment that needs to be done. But it's a very collaborative company, and it's not about the multiple stakeholders you need to manage, but it's just the clarity. The long time needed is to align whether um, whether you want to do it or not. After you make that decision, actually the alignment gets faster.
I see. Okay, that makes a lot of sense. Sort of shifting gears here, maybe talking about companies that potentially move very, very fast. I wanted to talk a bit about venture capital and sort of the startup ecosystem in Indonesia. So you have experience as a director at Alpha JWC in Indonesia. So for listeners who may not be familiar, what does a venture capital firm like Alpha JWC do, and how does it differ in Indonesia versus maybe, let's say, in like Silicon Valley?
Yeah. So in simple terms, venture capital firms raise money or pool money from investors, and they invest that money on early stage companies trying to solve a certain problem and make an impact in the world, right? And as a venture capital, our job is to find those rare companies and rare founders with the vision, with the resilience, with the executional capability to actually put that vision into reality. And after we invest, we also help them execute as much as possible. So basically, that's what venture capital is. How is it different between Indonesia and Silicon Valley? I think the biggest difference is the role of the venture capital. I would say in most venture capitals in the U.S. probably um, focus on just the investment side of things, but in Asia, we learned that you cannot really just invest and let the CEO or the founder to execute the vision. It's much more meaningful if you also stand by them and support them in executing that strategy, because executing the strategy into reality is a little bit more complex, and the founders here would really appreciate that help from the venture capital.
I see. That makes a lot of sense. One thing I've been seeing a lot on social media in terms of the, let's say, Indonesian startup ecosystem, or maybe the Southeast Asian startup ecosystem, is that there are specific things that make companies succeed versus fail in certain countries. So, from your perspectives and what experience you've had at Alpha GWC, what would you say separates companies that really succeed in Indonesia versus those that don't?
Hmm. Um, as 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 cliche as it sounds, but I think the founder or the CEO is the largest contributing factor to a success of the company, especially on the early stage, right? And when I look at the leader of the company, there are three things that I think differentiates a great leader and an average leader. Number one is they should have the vision. Number two is the charisma to attract investors, but also attract great talent. Number three is the operational execution. Um, so these three things are what makes a great leader, and the tricky part is always how to assess this um,
Mhm.
during your interactions with the company or your interaction with the leader, right? Yeah.
Mhm. What what does that process work in your experience at Alpha JWC in terms of how do you source different companies that you're looking at investing in? How do you go about sort of inviting them for like a conversation, and then what do you do to sort of assess them and see if they're a good fit for your portfolio and your investment?
Yeah. Sourcing wise, there are two channels. Number one is just inbound. We get um, tens of thousands of inbounds or pitch every year. Another one is through referrals, right? The community in Indonesia is not that big. Everybody knows everyone. So typically, we also get referrals about potential great companies or great founders. After that, um, it's quite straightforward. We invite the founder to share their idea, and if we are interested enough, we have multiple conversations with them, and up to a point where we also do some due diligence. And when we do diligence, we speak with the founder, we speak with the leadership team in the company, and um, we we do reference checks as well, right? And given the community is quite small in Asia, you can always do reference checks, and you really understand the character of the leader and the management team.
I see. Yeah, that sounds pretty in line with how different venture capital firms work across the board. Maybe one question I have is: are we seeing more like homegrown, like Indonesian venture capital firms, or would you say that the VC ecosystem operates more regionally? So like you have like regional players maybe based in like Singapore or another country, or are you seeing a lot of global VC firms with maybe a like Asian arm investing in companies in Southeast Asia? Maybe like walk us through a little bit how the ecosystem looks like today, or like as of your most recent experience.
Yeah, I think the most active venture capital firms are mostly local or homegrown, and there are reasons for it. There are good reasons for it because being local and being on the ground helps these VCs to know exactly the nuance of the economy, of the society. And for example, the reference checks that I mentioned to you is also something that a local VC can do much faster and quicker, right?
Mhm.
We, having said that, we also see a lot of regional players, but their playbook is a little bit different, right? They might be able to share best practices from global or regional players that can be transferred to the local company in Indonesia. But the depth and the local nuance probably wouldn't be as deep as a local VC. And the the value creation that they wanted to do with the startups in Indonesia also is a little bit different, right? It's more about drawing parallels and sharing best practices from other regional players.
I see. You've operated at this high level within VC, and now you've moved to a more operator role as CEO at a company. So, what motivated you to take on that CEO role at Satu Dental? You mentioned a little bit before, but maybe if you can paint a little bit more on what motivated you to take the CEO role at this point in your career.
Yeah. So I think number one is the industry itself is very interesting, Raditya. From macro perspective, right? Dental industry, especially in Asia, has a very big gap right now. Many Indonesians cannot have access to high quality care, and it's due to pricing or not enough access or footprint from the dental companies. So that's from the business side of things. But personally, as I mentioned to you, I have some familiarity with the industry because my mom was also a dentist. So that's on the industry side. Still on the industry side, I truly believe there is a big opportunity for um, people to innovate. Sharing some statistics, out of 10,000 people in Indonesia, we only have one dentist. And wow, that's very few. That's maybe 1/5 or 1/4 of the WHO recommendation. So we still have a lot of um, gap and challenge there. Mm-hmm. And when the opportunity from Satu Dental came in, Satu Dental, for audience that do not know, we are Satu Dental is a high growth dental chain with the mission to provide high quality dental care to as many Indonesians as possible. And the way to do it is two things. Number one, of course, is to solve the footprint issue. So Satu Dental has now more than 50 clinics, and we built it just in 4 years, outpacing any other players in the industry before. Number two is pricing. We give affordable pricing, and we were able to do it because we're vertically integrated. We have our own distribution arm and our dental lab arm in-house that helps us to lower down the cost, and that gives opportunity for us to give affordable price to our customers. And when the opportunity came and I'm aligned with the mission, I said yes right away because it really aligns with my career goal so far to always contribute to Indonesia. And I feel like I have the chance to contribute in this industry. Not enough talent has came in, not enough capital has came in. So I'm giving it a chance.
I see. Yeah, that makes a lot of sense. Thanks for sharing. It sounds like for any emerging market, for any sort of underdeveloped, really important industry for public health, it sounds like there's always two really big issues. It's access and affordability. It sounds like Satu Dental is sort of tackling the access portion by opening more locations. So I think you said 50 within 4 years, which is an insane rate, by the way. And then two, it's affordability. So understanding more the value chain and owning it more to drive costs down for the consumer. Um, in the results that you've seen that have been really great, what would you say were some of the biggest challenges to getting there in improving that healthcare access and quality for Indonesians or your customers?
Yeah, I can think of two challenge. Number one is awareness and education. Many people in Indonesia don't think of dental care as essential yet. They only come to the dentist or to the clinic when there is pain. So it's all about pain release, not about prevention. So that is one challenge. But interestingly, I see that in recent years, especially after COVID, more people are more aware about healthcare, and I've seen people now um, going into the dentist every 6 months, and also bringing their kids to the dentist more often, right? So that trend has shifted quite a bit. Secondly, the challenge is about the number of healthcare professionals, Raditya. As I mentioned to you, the number of dentist graduates every year is not enough to um, to support the large population of Indonesia. In parallel, we try to build partnerships and started discussions with universities and exploring if we can give scholarships as well to help solve this problem. But as of now, the ratio of dentists and population is quite low. But I'm quite optimistic with the discussions that I have talking with some of the leaders in healthcare. I think everyone is aligned that this is a big problem that needs to be solved in Indonesia. Yeah.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, these sounds like really sort of structural issues that are really difficult for just a single person or a single team or a single company to tackle. And I'm seeing like you're describing really creative solutions to tackle those. And yeah, I think we need more founders and leaders in Indonesia who are willing to sort of put in the effort to um, find those creative solutions like this. Um, Cool. And maybe compared to previous roles that you've had, though those are like leadership positions in Gojek and um, in the venture capital firm, um, what's been the biggest adjustment in terms of stepping into a CEO role where sort of everyone in the company is looking towards you to be like the visionary and make operational decisions that have trade-offs. So maybe what's the biggest adjustment that uh, you've had to make in terms of stepping into that CEO role?
Yeah. Oh man, nothing teaches you. There's no class or there's no course that can teach you to become a CEO, right? But um, I'm fortunate enough to have uh, the chance to lead a business before, not as a CEO, but at least as a senior business leader. I'm fortunate enough to have exposure at a venture capital firm and get inspired by multiple founders and learn from them. So that experience helps. But still, Raditya, when I step into the CEO role and when I have big problems that I am stuck with, previously I always ask my manager or my boss to help me figure this out together, right?
Mm-hmm.
But right now, I am that person that is being asked by all the people when they're stuck, right? So
Mm-hmm.
all the most difficult problems goes to me, and I need to come up with a solution because otherwise they're stuck and I need to be decisive. So that is a big adjustment. Another big adjustment is that I now have a very wide scope. I have some exposure to finance, tax, legal, supply chain. I have some exposure to that previously, but I've never led it before,
Mm-hmm.
and let alone getting asked for the most difficult questions on supply chain, finance, tax, legal, expansion, etc. Right? Um, that is a big adjustment for me. But honestly, I try to solve it by two things. Number one is just try to be logical and do not panic, like what I mentioned earlier. But number two, also, it's very important to have a great team, making sure that you hire the right team, you develop the right team. And not only that, but also building a culture where your teams can raise issues to you openly without hiding them and having the spirit of problem solving. that also helps me to really understand the truth on the ground and just focus on solving them. Because I also see that some people are not that open to their leaders. They're afraid to raise issues, and that actually doesn't help the company to solve the real problems on the ground. So that's how I try to adjust and really solve the true problem on the ground.
Mm-hmm. I got you. It sounds like a lot sort of on your plate. We hear a lot of stories about founders having a really sort of difficult time, like a lot of expectation, a lot of pressure from all angles. So it's good to hear sort of your positive perspective on what being a CEO is like. Okay, so maybe in the sort of closing stages of this episode, want to go into a section on career reflection and perhaps advice for the next generation of professionals. So you've been a part of efforts that create a lot of value for Indonesia, right? Like whether it's at Gojek, Chevron, Satu Dental, uh, you've created a lot of that value for the country. How intentional would you say that has been for you in terms of, okay, I want to always be in a role where I feel like I'm contributing to the good of the country's progress and development?
Yeah. Um, I would say it's quite intentional, but it's something that is not easy to design yourself. So it's a combination of being intentional with the options that you have and also being lucky to be given those opportunities to you, right? To elaborate a little bit more is that in whatever you do, in any job that you have or responsibility that you have, always do your best. And when you do your best, when you make an impact in your environment, that news travel fast. And and being known for being a good operator helps to bring and attract those opportunities to you. And um, once in a while, if there are multiple opportunities that came in, I go back to the 4 questions I ask myself. And one of the questions is whether I can really contribute and whether that company is actually doing something that I can be proud of later on in life, right? So I just
Mm-hmm.
keep on um, doing the best that I can do, but also try to bring opportunities to come and ask myself how to contribute back.
Mm-hmm. I see. There's a big portion of the younger generation, particularly in emerging markets, that have the privilege to, study abroad or get a job abroad, and they find that it's a really great experience, sort of living in a different country. But there's still a desire to contribute to back home. So for someone who's early in their career deciding between staying in sort of whatever country they find themselves in, whether it's a country in Europe or maybe it's like the US, like myself, or Australia, versus building a career in uh, their home country and in an emerging market. For example, building a career in Southeast Asia or in Indonesia, how should one think about that choice, given how pivotal it is to their career trajectory? A bit of a meaty question, but would love your sort of perspective on that, particularly given different like economic climate in Indonesia today relative to maybe 5 to 10 years ago.
Very, very good question, Raditya. So to answer this question, I would actually reframe the question a little bit, right?
Mm-hmm.
The question I would ask myself if I were in the shoes of these young professionals is, what should I focus on in my first 10 years of my career? And my answer would be focus on number one, exploring and finding what you really like to do. And number two, learn as much as possible and surround yourself with the best. and that's how you wanted to learn the fastest, right? And if the answer to those two focuses is abroad, then work abroad, and that's fine. You explore what you like, you learn from the best. Depends on what industry you're at or what you wanted to explore, right? Go for it, because probably there are some industries that is best learned back home. There are some industries that's best learned outside of your home country, and that's totally fine. But I wouldn't stop there in thinking about my career, right? The first 10 years, yes, focus on exploring and learning. But after the first 10 years, I would focus on contributing and making an impact. And and for myself, maybe this also relates to why I go back to Indonesia right away after my MBA, because I really believe that I can make a much bigger impact if I go home to Indonesia, right? If I stayed in the US, maybe I'm just one of 10,000 MBA graduates every year, right? But if I go back home, I'm one of a rare talent that has studied MBA in the US, understands business, understands operations, and probably can make a little bit of a difference in Indonesia. If I stayed in the US, I wouldn't be able to make such a big of a difference, right? But
Yeah.
again, this question really depends on what stage you are in your career, economic trade-off, or the opportunity that is presented to you. I don't want to be naive and assume that everyone has the same options, right? But that would be my framework.
Got you. Yeah, that makes a lot of sense. Sort of splitting it into the first early 10 years of your career and then think about contributing afterwards. Also thinking about relative um, advantages versus, like when we're comparing the pool of talent back home versus abroad, sometimes it can seem like a much more big relative advantage going back home versus not. That makes a lot of sense to me. And maybe I'll ask this as a final question on sort of advice and career reflections. What gives you optimism for Indonesia currently?
Um, that's a good question. So right now, right, we are in the middle of so much uncertainty in Indonesia. Raditya, I think you're following the news as well. We are, as of this recording, we're in May 2026, right? The Indonesian index is down significantly from early this year. The currency is weaker than it was 6 months ago. People are worried about inflation, high unemployment rate, etc., etc. I do not have a great answer for that question, but I do not ask myself that question honestly, Raditya. I just focus on what can I do and contribute to Indonesia, and I ask myself continuously, why am I so lucky? Why am I so fortunate in my career? Why am I given so much opportunity? And this country has given me a lot. And this country has given me scholarship. This country has given me great education. This country has given me a lot of great people that has become friends, best friends, and families. So the question I have is always, what can I contribute to the country? And I understand that people can be afraid and worried, but I I have this quote. I don't know where I get inspired to have this quote that I keep myself remembering, but darkness doesn't need our anger. Indonesia does not need more of your complaints. Rather than being angry or just complaining, just think about what can you contribute. How can be a light in the middle of the darkness if you believe the situation is not so good, right? So rather than complaining and just being angry, focus on what can we do, what little change can we do to support. And I'm very optimistic actually, because there's a lot of Indonesians and young people who still have that spirit to contribute to the country, right? And this is also relevant to the background that I have. Indonesia is not only about the government or the structural institutions that we have, but also it's about the people, and it's about the good people, the 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 good people that makes up Indonesia, and that's what I'm focusing on.
Got you. That makes a lot of sense. I think it's really important for me personally to revive that again, that spirit that you mentioned. I think particularly there are a lot of young people, maybe around my age, like early 20s, who really feel maybe optimistic about Indonesia, but there are certain like structural occurrences that are happening today where it makes it difficult to appreciate all the positives or the things that Indonesia has going for it relative to maybe other countries that are actually in a relatively maybe worse position, not to sort of name any sort of countries. But yeah, I think that's great sort of perspective on the sort of optimistic or optimism level of optimism that people in Indonesia should or should not have. Okay, I think that concludes the sort of meaty portion of the episode. I wanted to end on a couple fun rapid fire questions that
Sure.
should be more lighthearted. Now, first question I have is, what is your go-to order on GoFood?
It's always nasi padang, and also coffee every morning.
I see. Would you consider yourself a power user still of GoFood?
Yes, of course. At least 4 times a week.
Yeah, that's a lot of times on GoFood. Second question: what's been your favorite place to travel to in Asia?
Ha. Um, Bali. So I go to Bali like
Ah,
3 times a year, maybe, Raditya. Just um, the job that I have sometimes can be quite stressful. And I always like to go to Bali just to release the stress and relax. And it's it's not too far away. It's so friendly, and um, at least the 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 ticket to go there is not as expensive to rather than going abroad, right? Yeah.
yeah, that makes sense. Where in Bali do you usually go to?
We go around
Okay,
Ubud or Sanur. Yeah.
yeah, relaxing. Third question: what's the best part of being CEO of Satu Dental?
What is the best part? I
Mhm.
think it's the ability to shape the vision and direction of the company, but also the ability and influence to shape the culture of the company, to create an environment that you enjoy working in, right? So both internally, you shape the culture. Externally, you can optimize for the impact that you want to make.
Awesome. Um, Fourth question here: what's the best piece of advice that you've ever received?
Ha. Um, I think there are multiple, but one that comes to mind is about hard work. There is just no substitute to hard work, right? However smart you are, however talented you are, you just gotta put in the work to be an expert at what you do.
Mm, yeah, hard work doesn't go unappreciated most
Yes,
times.
yes,
And last question here: where's or what's one piece of advice that you would give to young people hoping to build their career in Asia?
yes. One advice I have is be strategic about it, right? Know exactly what you want in your life. And regardless of you decide coming back to Indonesia or not, whether you decide to work in Indonesia or not, do it with an open eye and understand the trade-off. And I shared earlier about my preference to contribute to Indonesia, but the same decision and the same framework can be different for many people. But the overarching theme is be strategic, be thoughtful about it, because at the end of the day, you want to have a meaningful and a good life while also contributing to your home, right? But be thoughtful about making that decision.
Okay. Thank you so much for being on this episode. Appreciate all the different insights and stories you've been able to share. And yeah, appreciate the conversation for sure.
Thank you. Thank you so much, Radit, for having me.
Yeah, of course. Thank you so much.